Good evening, punters, and welcome to another episode of The Tripod, where we break down every NRL game every week from a punting perspective. This week we'll be going through round 13 and what we learnt. Decent week on best bets, and certainly not our best week, going 6 and 5. Got lucky in a couple of games, a little bit unlucky. We're on the right sides, and I thought we were on the wrong sides of a couple of games, definitely. But all in all, a pretty exciting round of footy. Jacob, what do you think?
Yeah, you're never too happy when your winning percentage goes down. We've been doing better than going 6 and 4 every 10 bets, and this round we went 6 and 5. But it's not easy to make money, and we still made a teensy bit of money this round. So I suppose that's all right, and there was some interesting footy played.
Indeed, there was. Let's start off with the game that we did just see, and it was the Eels beating the Sharks 14 points to 12. We didn't have any best bets on this one. I did claw my way back with a side bet over Jacob with the Sharkies, but a little bit disappointing for us, or for me, because we gave out, Panthers to win the minor premiership, and obviously Eels losing this one would have gone a long way to helping that bet win, but it wasn't to be, and it was a really close game, and I thought Sharks had ample opportunities to win that one. I thought the Eels got a couple of calls go their way late to help them move up the field and get that penalty to go ahead, but it's just once again, I think I'm higher on the Sharks team than you are, but once again, the goal kicking just let them down in this one. They lose the game, another game where they score more tries than the opposition and lose. But just a gritty win from the Eels. Not their best performance of the year by far, but another win on the board.
If people didn't see the game, it was played in an absolute swamp. It was bucketing down. It barely resembled rugby league, just how different it was. There was so many drop balls and just crazy moments. So it's hard to take a lot away from this game. From a punting perspective, we often talk about how we're getting on unders because rain is predicted. And while you never can predict that level of rain, that's one of the reasons. Because sometimes that you watch a game like the Savo and it never had a chance to go over. It's also why we always talk about taking the points in wet conditions, and you took the Sharks against me. You got 6.5 when we made our bet on Wednesday, and even though the Eels were up by 8 at one point, it's very hard to lay points in terrible rainy conditions. And not only would that have been a great upset for the future bet of Penrith, but we had a same game multi for the Sharks for the outright upset as well. So disappointing to not cash that one. But you're right, the Sharks, I am probably too low on them. It was another gutsy effort, but they fall just short once again.
Indeed, they did. Let's move on to the Thursday game, and it was the Roosters beating the Dragons 24 points to 16. Did have a couple of best bets on this one. We were on the Dragons, and we did cash both of those best bets. I thought this game was a pretty close one, actually. I thought that the Roosters, a lot of people say that the Roosters were off in this one, but I think it's more than that, and we kind of alluded to it in the preview pod, that this Roosters side is not full strength currently, and they're just, those injuries are catching up to them. They're not the same Roosters that were, the awesome back-to-back premiers for the last 2 years. So, don't think of this game as just a one-off bad Roosters performance. I think this is part of a larger sort of thing for this Roosters team. In terms of the Dragons, solid performance once again. I thought Lomax was awesome, and I know we shitted on Lomax, even last year. He wasn't that good, but he's got to be up there with one of the most improved players of the season for sure. And I thought when Tristan Saylor came on actually for the Dragons, I thought he injected a little bit more playmaking. I thought he was decent for them. But then just stupid mistakes from the Dragons just cost them in this one. I think there was a Roosters bomb that went up. No one wanted a piece of it. And then the Roosters score off the back of that. So, this Dragons side is not a top 8 side, but they fought hard in this one.
Yeah, the most stupid mistake of all, which cost the Dragons, was Paul Vaughan going to get a fucking coffee.
Yeah.
And him getting scratched a few hours before the game.
Dumb.
This is the best forward on that team. He's having a good year. He would have been in the mix to get an Origin jersey, and especially on the back of the fact that Warrior Hargraves was going to be out for the Roosters. The Dragons had a real shot here, and that's why we got a great line. We bet it on Wednesday before anybody had been ruled out. We got plus 11.5 and then bet an exact margin to essentially get plus 12.5. And then Paul Vaughan gets scratched, and I feel like not only is that a huge loss, but it's deflating. You're playing the back-to-back champs on a primetime game, and you've lost your best front rower. And in saying that, it was a tied scores at half-time, and the Dragons were absolutely in it. So we cashed our first half plus 4.5. We do get lucky. We get a miracle try on the final play of the game when they were down 14. They make a break, and then Dufty Grubber ahead for himself. But the larger point I want to make here is the Roosters could have easily lost the last 5 games. We talk about their injuries. We're not even talking about Verrills and Radley, right? Because they're gone for the season. But in the last 5 weeks, like Boyd Cordner, New South Wales captain. You got Angus Crichton played for New South Wales. Tupou's played for New South Wales, and he's an Origin level winger. Both the Morris brothers, and I mentioned Warrior Hargraves, an international, right? None of them were playing. Yeah, and most of them have been out or in and out in the last few weeks. And of the last 5 games, the only one they did lose was the Raiders, which was close. And they've won all these other games. They beat North Queensland when a lot of things could have gone against them. They flogged North Queensland, and they hung in tough against the Warriors and the Titans, and again against the Dragons. They're winning just on the back of their class and on the back of defending in clutch moments when they need to, and that was the difference. Dragons had opportunities, but the Roosters always turn them away, and I feel like this is perfect for them. It keeps them in touch with the top 4, and they've just got so many stars to bring back in. I'm nearly as impressed with how the Roosters have navigated the last month as I am was what they were doing when they were full strength. So I think that they'll be perfectly happy, even though they haven't covered in 6 weeks. It depends who they get back. They're getting the Storm at a good time on Thursday night as well. I think they're perfectly happy with how they're going along.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the Friday early game, and this one was a shocker for most people. It was the Warriors upsetting the Seagulls, 26 points to 22. We didn't have any best bets on this one. To be fair, we did think that Manly would get the win in this one. And a game that they really had to win this one, as a double-digit favourite. But, I mean, once again, another one of those wet weather games. And it looked like, honestly, like Manly had never defended in the wet in their lives before. There was gaping holes everywhere. They were falling off tackles, especially in that early portion of the game where the Warriors scored 3 quick tries and kind of just ambushed them. And that's exactly what it was. It was an ambush. Like, Manly were not up for this one. And that's now 3 weeks in a row. You got to give props to this Warriors team. That's 3 weeks in a row where they've come up with really solid, gutsy performances. So, I don't necessarily think it's, a boost from like the boys going home and the team gets up for it. I think, this is becoming a trend now with this Warriors side that they are turning up for these games.
We thought Manly would win, but we also said the line was too high. Our power rating suggested it was too high, so we should have been on Manly. It's easy to say. I mean, straight after the pod, both their starting second rowers in Thompson and Sirinen were ruled out, and then you felt even more that the Warriors had a chance. But to bet on the Warriors on Friday, you had to, exactly as you said, you had to believe that in their consistency. And how could you? I kind of said on Wednesday, they hadn't played good in back-to-back weeks, let alone 3 in a row. But they did. And, Blake Green released from the club this week, but Chanel Harris-Tavita comes in and wants to make that jersey his own, look like he played with energy. Now, if you didn't see the game, New Zealand was out to 16-0. But the Seagulls were back to 16-10 with a Warrior in the sin bin. You still felt like Seagulls probably at home would get over the top of them. Then second half, New Zealand extended the lead again back out to 26-10 and gone, oh no, New Zealand's on here. And Manly pulled them right back to 26-22 and again had chances to win. So I guess when you're playing catch-up all night and in the rain, it's very hard, very disappointing performance for Manly. And another great effort, as you said, from New Zealand, but it's still hard to predict whether they can produce that every week.
Very true. And you're right, like such a gutsy performance. And not only one sin bin, 2 sin bins in that game, and to still win over Manly, really solid. Let's move on to the Rabbits beating the Broncos 28 points to 10. Another game that we didn't have any best bets on, although we did have a side bet. And I got another one up against Jacob. I'm clawing my way back finally, but don't know too much to take out of this one. The Rabbits were too good. They were better in this one. But the Broncos, just the effort, like the tries that they're fucking letting in. Like to let in a try off a tap where the defense is it's not even a quick tap where you're getting them, unawares. They were defense completely set. And whether that's coaching, or I don't think it's coaching necessarily, it's just effort from this Broncos side. And, I guess we don't want to get into it too much, but, there may be things behind the scenes with this Broncos side that people aren't talking about too much, some inner turmoil that, is just hurting this team's morale. But another good win from this Rabbits side. And to be honest, not many people are going to look at this game and say, oh, impressive win by the Rabbits. So I still do think they're flying under the radar a little bit.
Yeah, I'm at peace with taking the Broncos plus 10.5 against you. Although I lost, I thought that was a good spot for them to play a competitive game. And it was a pretty competitive game. I would say there were a few moments in that game that went against the Broncos, some bogus escort penalties at crucial times. But I feel like you're probably happy.
They're really trying to crack down on those.
But still, like, that really did hurt Brisbane, their moments. Like, there was a moment where Xavier Coates jumps for a ball. If he catches that, he actually puts Brisbane in front. And then next second, about 3 different things went against them and they were down double digits. But look, if you bet on South, you knew they were the better team. They were at home. You knew you had a half like Reynolds who can control a game. And you knew that Broncos, at times, just have diabolical lapses, like what we saw when Nichols, as you said, he gets the ball first tackle off a tap. He doesn't think he's going to score. He's running it up as a settler. He got up laughing. And then Burgess, same thing, scores a barge over second half. Like, that's embarrassing. And I don't want to get into the weeds too much with Brisbane, but I do want to say, like, it is absolute turmoil. So let's just recap the week they've had, right? The Katoni Staggs vid, like that's not a good look, but hey, like, it's not necessarily completely his fault. What's worse, the news story this week that he's looking to leave after his contract ends next year. I mean, for me, I look at this Brisbane team and talk about their future. They have 3 true superstars on the team, I believe, in David Fifita, Payne Haas, and Katoni Staggs. Fifita's already gone. If that's true that Staggs wants to leave, I mean, Brisbane has a lot of advantages. They have a lot of players that come through. They can recruit well. But you can't replace, like, players that are 21 years old and destined to be superstars. Like, that goes beyond the pain that they'll feel from this bad year. Will go way beyond 2020. The Seabold stuff, and he's had to stay in Sydney, and now he's going to have to quarantine for 14 days, and there's rumours about him. Boyd stepped down from the leadership group, which seems weird. And when I watch them, every time they let in a try, which is very often, who's talking to all the boys? It's Boyd. He's always talking. Fair enough. He's by far the most experienced player on the team. But my point has always been he doesn't put his body on the line, and he doesn't, he's so lazy at times and doesn't play with a full commitment. So why would you listen to him? Where's the leadership? In fact, I listened to Lodge talk after the game, and they asked him, if he would want to be captain or along the lines of leadership. And he said, I'd love to have a leader on this team I could look up to. I mean, then you have Tavita Pangai Jr. The news came out this week that he was phoning up clubs to ask if there's any interest. And then there's now the story that he's had the biosecurity breach. So it's this absolutely toxic environment. It's shocking. And I guess if you're playing Brisbane, like even on Friday night, I said, you might be better off just back them to win because they might play a good game. But if they don't, they could lose by any score.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's probably one of 2 ways, because they either show up or they don't. So you either back them to win as a big underdog, or you back them to fucking lose by 40 plus. Let's move on to the Storm beating the Bulldogs 41 points to 10. We had a couple of best bets on this one on the Storm and won both of them. And this one, I don't know what to take out of this one. The Storm were just way too good. But in terms of betting, like, it's just a good win from the Storm. Not taking too much away from the Storm for this one. Obviously, the big news is the Munster injury, which was huge for them in the second half. But in terms of the Bulldogs, like, I hate the Bulldogs, I've been known. But, a sunny game in the daytime on the sunny coast, like, perfect weather games are probably bad times to bet on the Bulldogs. You want to get on them when it's a terrible weather game where they can get into the trenches like the one they won, a couple of weeks ago. So when it's beautiful sunny weather and it's going to be an open footy game, that's a bad time to bet on a Dogs team that really struggles to score points.
And it was also a bad time to bet on the Dogs because they were a little deflated, I think, after getting so close to upsetting the Eels. It's very hard to get up again. The Storm didn't make it easy for them. I tell you, the Dogs had the better of the running the first 10 minutes, had the Storm under pressure, and threw a 90-metre intercept pass when they had an overlap. And in fact, that was one of, I think, 2 or 3, at least 2 length of the field intercept tries. So while the Storm won by 31, they were flattered, I guess, by a couple of those runaway tries. But we knew Smith was, injured/rested. Pappenhausen, same thing. After we gave out our best bets, Finucane, who's an Origin lock forward, was also rested. And then Munster got injured during this game. So you still kind of have to say the Storm are flying and, they take adversity in their stride and still put up great performances. And we've said this before, they're loving life on the sunny coast. They're loving life in camp and they got big belief. Now this week, it's bad timing that they got to play the Roosters again. Only played them a month ago in an epic and without these key players. But overall, this team has gone really well. And the Dogs, it's the same sort of thing. They give you effort, but as you say, in good conditions to play some footy, that's something that they don't play an expansive game, and they never really got too close to Melbourne.
No, they didn't. And let's move on to a game that we did get wrong. It was the Knights absolutely obliterating the Tigers, 44 points to 4. We thought that the Tigers would be able to hang in this one, and it was not the case. To be fair, this was the best game that this Knights team has played all season long. Like, Ponga has been a little bit up and down this year, but he was awesome in this one. 2 tries, 2 try assists, just running all over this Tigers side. But, bad performance from the Tigers, but I thought they really missed Harry Grant in attack. Like, just their attack looks so much different when he's on the field. I know it's kind of weird to say about a guy that's been there, for less than a year there in that Tigers side, but he really does lift that team. And I don't know if it was like almost deflating for this Tigers side that's like fighting to make the 8 to find out that he's going to be out for quite some time, but it was really just a putrid performance for them in a huge game that they really needed to win.
Yeah, I think you're right about the Grant news, which we overlooked. And another thing we missed, we talked a week ago about how they had to beat the Warriors to really think they were a top 8 side.
True.
Then when they lost to the Warriors, we should have cottoned on. Like, that could be a dream crusher, because the reality sets in that, look, they've got a tough run coming up, including this game, which was in Newcastle. If they couldn't beat the Warriors, they're probably not going to make the 8. And I'll tell you the problem that they have with Madge, right? He's so intense. He talks to them and he holds them to the standard of a top 4 side, which sounds great because he wants to build that culture and that belief. But he blasts them every time they don't beat someone who's outside the top 4. And the problem is when you keep yelling at your team and you get so angry every time they drop a game, and you treat them like they're top 4 side, but they don't have top 4 talent, you're just going to burn them out. Yep. And he just looked like lost at halftime. They were pretty deplorable. They didn't hold the footy. They let in a try right on the stroke of halftime, so they didn't really have a chance. I think it was like 24-4, and it was much of the same coming second half. He didn't even know what to say to him at halftime. And another reason we did go against the Knights, and I'll admit when we're wrong for sure, we shouldn't have. But they were without Bradman and Best. But when you steamroll a team, it doesn't matter which outside backs you've got out there. And a star outside back like Best can break open a tight game. But this game was far from tight.
Indeed, it wasn't. And let's move on to another game that we got wrong. It was the Panthers beating the Raiders 28 points to 12. We had a couple of best bets on this one and go down in both of them. And I'll take full responsibility for this one because I think I twisted your arm to take the Raiders in this one, Jacob. I really did think that they'd be able to keep it close, but they just got steamrolled early. I mean, 24-0 in the first half, and then the game's over at that point. But in the Raiders' defense, I honestly thought that this game was a little bit closer. They did get a little bit unlucky. Like, they had a few disallowed tries, like the one that came off Croker's head just offside, and I think Papali had another one where he was over the line, just couldn't get it down. I thought they had numerous chances, and just the ball didn't go their way in this one. I still do want to bet on this Raiders side that now that they're at full strength, but they just got jumped on early, and it was just another clinical performance by Cleary. He has not had a bad game in so long, and the addition of Coruscant, coming back into this team, the attack does go up a level. So, now that he's back in this side, you almost have to upgrade this Panthers side even more. But they've just been rolling, and they don't seem to know how to lose anymore. It's 8 in a row.
Part of successful betting is getting a good line. And if you go back to the Tigers, we got +6, and it did actually come in more like a +3.5, but I still would say we got it wrong. And this game, kind of similar thing. We got line value in that we got the Raiders +6.5, and it was 5.5 or maybe 6 on game day. But the problem is this Panthers team is high profile, so every week that line is going to be a little higher than it should be. So it's going to feel like the line is too high and that there's value betting against the Penrith. But how can you account for this team is just on one? They have so much spirit, so much confidence. They are loving life. They are playing amazing footy. And we took the Raiders in this one, and they had the perfect start. They kicked a 40-20 on the first set of the match. They had the ball for 6 straight sets, but the Panthers repelled them, and they came back out at them. And in the next, the next 30 minutes of the game, scored 24 unanswered. I said this week that Nathan Cleary is the best player in the game, and he was unbelievable again. Some of the kicks that he came up with, and the set play that he laid on for Kickow, who was monstrous. Look at that left edge they've got. The combination of Kickow and Stephen Crichton. It's unstoppable. But I think there's been a lot of attention made on their attack, and when they line up to the left or the right, how deep their back line is, which allows the players to hit the ball at such pace, and it definitely looks like they've made leaps and bounds in attack, and maybe that's the influence of Trent Barrett. But you've got to give credit to their defense. Their defense is also really good. This Penrith team, they show up. But I will say there were moments in this game where the Raiders got repeat sets on the Panthers goal line and had opportunities to score points. and they looked a little bit like lacking creativity, mate. I think this is where you really see them miss Josh Hodgson against an elite defense when they really need to find points. They looked a little bit lost in attack, but I still know that I'm not taking much away from the Raiders because once again the Panthers were unreal and one silver lining, although we lost two best bets, and like we lose one of our best bets by half a try because they didn't score a try second half, but one silver lining is Panthers still remain top of the table and look very hard to beat.
Yeah, and got out of a couple. I guess this week and last week was kind of they've got an easy-ish stretch. I think the Eels are the only sort of really good team left for the Panthers side coming up. Let's get on to the early game today. It was the Titans smacking around the Cowboys, 30 points to 10. We had a couple of best bets on the Titans. It was probably our favourite side of the week. We do cash both of them. And just another really good performance by the Titans. But the Cowboys, this is all about the Cowboys. They were awful today. They were absolutely awful. A lot of punters might have seen, Michael Morgan back in the team. This is going to be a boost. But honestly, he does not look anywhere close to 100%, I thought. And really, what's this Cowboys side trying to achieve here? You know that he's injury prone. And just from looking at him, honestly, I think they should just rest him for the rest of the season. The season is not going anywhere. You're just giving him another chance to get hurt. But the Titans, really good. AJ Brimson's been a revelation since he's come back on. I know that I kind of said, Corey Thompson's been awesome for them. But you're right, Jacob. AJ Brimson has more talent. And, I could think a couple of tries in this one again. And this Titans side, just a really, really good performance. And just putting in, it's easy for a shit team like the Titans to kind of not put in every week. And, they just had more effort than the Cowboys in this one. I think that was the difference, epitomized by fucking Proctor, chasing down that grubber, batting it back. And you just see, he was so stoked. His teammates were so stoked. And that's good to see from a bottom four team that you're going to get that effort. And I think, looking at them, you probably are week in, week out.
And that is something that it's even taken me years to realize, to really look at, and it is real, is that body language of a team. And I do look closely at that when teams, and Penrith is a perfect example, if they even just force an error or just hold a team out for 6 tackles, they all get around each other and look absolutely pumped. And you can actually read into that's a mark of a team that's playing with good, chemistry and camaraderie. And the Titans were that today. They were amped up, and Holbrook has them coming out expecting to win. You're at home, you're playing a side that's no better than you. You go out and you expect to win the game, and they were pretty ruthless. And yeah, Proctor led by example. Brimson is a emerging star of the competition and promising signs for this team. Fogarty probably had his best game as well. Took the goal kicking duties and slotted a few wide conversions as well, which is nice. And for the Cowboys, I don't know. You've got to trust that you bring a player in like Morgan, another guy who's on big money. Don't forget Holmes is on ice, but Morgan, your captain, comes in. But he looked like what we've seen DCE in games this year, where it's all his teammates are looking at him. Oh, can you create something for us? And he was trying to do too much. And the Cowboys should be thankful of what the debacle and dumpster fire that's happening in Brisbane. I think otherwise there'd be more attention on how bad they've been. Only other thing I could guess, the news this week that the Cowboys are narrowing down on their head coach. I think it's well known it's not going to be Josh Hannay. So then was he deflated that he won't be the permanent coach? And then were his players don't have as much reason to fight hard for him because he's not going to be the long-term fixture there. But I don't know, that's a poor excuse. They got Maguire, they got Morgan back. I didn't think they'd win today, but they were well below even what I was expecting. So very disappointing for this Cowboys team. Pretty useless.
No, and you're probably onto something, honestly, because you look at the team that has been giving the least effort this season, and that's the Broncos. And, from everything that you hear, they're probably the team that wants to fight for their coach the least out of any of the 16 teams. So, look, that's going to wrap it for round 13, guys. A narrow winning round. Hopefully we'll do a little bit better next week. But make sure you tune in Wednesday, 6 p.m, and we will be breaking down round 14 of the NRL. We'll catch you guys then.
Lego.